Thank you very much, everybody. My name is Michel. I am these days entrepreneur and consultant. I will talk to you today about my vision on the future of the pharmaceutical and biotech industry. Just a brief career overview. I didn't fill in all the details necessarily. Medical biology, the same year as Inge actually, and we started in 91, finished in 95. I actually picked up a PhD studies after that at the University of Amsterdam with Jaap Goudsmit. I have an MBA from the Erasmus University also in the meantime, but what you mainly see here is a different type of companies I've been working on and working with in the meantime. I worked at the large pharmaceutical companies like Novartis. I worked for very small diagnostics companies like Primagen, management consulting, a company called Bain & Company. I worked at Octopus, and that started for me already to divert from the science towards the business aspects of the life sciences. Octopus in Leiden, a formulation development company. Crystallix is the company where I work these days for as a consultant, basically in business development, a company in small molecule development. So you can see there's actually a lot of diversity within my career, and now I'm trying to capitalize on the knowledge that I gained, the broad knowledge that I gained by actually setting up a couple of my own companies, both in consulting as well as in pharmaceutical development. And the last company that you see here on the list is Madame Therapeutics, and that's one of our flagship companies, together with some people that I'm running at the moment in drug development, mainly in dermatology, which I cannot necessarily say the most easy way of proceeding, but it is definitely an interesting learning school as well for me. In this case, 2 minutes is actually very long, because we don't have any influence on it. But what I will following inform you about is a brief history a brief overview of what the pharmaceutical industry is, what the trends are. We will look for a minute also at the pharmaceutical development pathway or timeline. And then I will give you indeed my ideas on what's going to happen in the near future as well as in the far future. If we look at several trends in the industry, and I think that happens already in the last 5 to potentially even 10 years, but also will continue for the next 5 years, is that all the big companies and all the smaller companies face a steep patent cliff, which means that the drugs that are currently on the patent will come off patent, generic industry will take over, and the companies face a large drop in revenues. What are several reasons? For example, also low-hanging fruit has been plucked already in the meantime. That means the easy molecules are all being discovered, they're all being tested, they're all being synthesized. So that means that the new drugs are very complex, and now 40 seconds is very short. And also, of course, the costs are rising very high because of the very expensive regulatory and manufacturing chemistry. If you look at the different parts of the pharmaceutical development cycle, you see the different phases of the clinical, you see the preclinical development. Basically, you start with a lot of molecules, you end up, if you're lucky, with one molecule after about 8 years. And then including the last registration trials towards manufacturing and supply, marketing and sales, roughly takes 10 to 12 years. And everybody has probably heard that you can easily spend 50 to 500 million on the drug development itself. There's many companies involved in pharmaceutical development, and this slide, because of the Mac, didn't transfer well to the Windows environment. I'm sorry for that. But basically, if you look at the pharmaceutical and biotech companies, you can distinguish the fully integrated companies that do everything from early discovery up to the development, up to the manufacturing and supply. You also have the mid-sized companies which have still a lot of activities outside the door, and you have the very small innovative technology companies, typically we call them the biotech companies. And what you can see on the right-hand side of the slide is that you actually have service providers which are very much mimicking the type of pharma and biotech companies. They also have the same type of classification. If you look at very large pharmaceutical companies that completely develop their own drugs, or the service companies that provide all the development activities in-house, the fact is that nobody can be the best in everything. So some companies are very good in discovery or formulation or clinical studies, as you can see here on the sort of greenish that you see on the slide. Some are medium good in, for example, toxicity or efficacy, and some are really bad in manufacturing and regulatory, and manufacturing is currently something that we see a lot of companies struggling with. Perhaps you have heard of the very often product recalls, for example from Johnson & Johnson in the last couple of years. If you look at my vision of the pharmaceutical industry, how it will be developed, the very near future, what I think is that a lot of the big pharma companies will split up in multiple companies. I think that the research and development will mainly move or completely move towards the innovative biotech and small pharmaceutical companies. Manufacturing and supply typically will remain with big pharma because it is very complex, and marketing and sales, because they're extremely good at it, is residing with big pharma. For the very far future, I think that only marketing and sales will remain at big pharma these days, and all the other functions will go to smaller companies or service providers. Actually, the same scenario you can apply for the very large service providers. Of course, you would like to have some evidence before you believe what I say, and you can actually just open it, open the websites, and this is a collection of only 2 months. You can see a large service provider up to it selling their clinical trial supply business. You see AstraZeneca cutting 7,500 jobs, and that's mainly in R&D. You see Sanofi that actually slashes R&D sites. Of course, we know Abbott has completely cut out all the development, is only focusing on manufacturing. Pfizer, there's a lot of rumor, will break up in 2 or more functions. Merck Serono is going to close their Geneva site, where a lot of R&D will disappear. And basically these companies will focus on manufacturing, supply, marketing and sales. What does this mean for your future job? Think very carefully, like what would you like to emphasize if you like to work within the pharmaceutical industry. If you like to work in research and development, try to focus also on smaller or expertise companies. Also think of pharmaceutical and service provider companies where a lot of R&D takes place. If you like more the operational side, manufacturing, supply, currently still with larger pharmaceuticals or service providers, I think in the near future, or sorry, in the somewhat further future, that will change. And if you think marketing and sales, obviously that will remain with the large pharmaceutical companies. And this was my 7-minute talk, and which I hope I could convince you a little bit about the changes that are happening in the pharmaceutical and biotech atmosphere. I'd like to thank you very much for your attention. My email is here listed for further questions.